Hey guys, welcome to True Crime Weekday Special. Our first case today is about a social app dating gone wrong, the case of Grace Millane. So Grace Emmy Rose Millane was born in 1996 in Essex, England, and she was born to parents David and Gillian. She was the youngest of the three siblings. Her two elder brothers were Michael and Declan, and she was a very sociable, lively, and family-oriented girl. She attended the University of Lincoln in advertising and marketing, and she was excited for her new adventure right after graduation because she had saved up a year long of money to travel and have a long voyage in South America. So she was described as really compassionate and caring because she even donated her long hair to Little Princess Trust to make little wigs for children with cancer. It was really sweet of her. In October 2018, Grace left her home and set off on her travels, adventurous and outgoing graduate travel to Peru, spending 6 weeks in South America. She met up with other travelers and she was keen to share her journey with everyone back home. On November 19, 2018, Grace arrived in New Zealand alone, and 11 days later she reached Auckland. She checked into a hostel called Base Backpackers on Queen Street, sharing a room with other travelers. On Sunday evening, December 1st, 2018, Grace left the hostel just before 6 p.m. and she was headed onto the city center, dressed in a knee-length black dress, white shoes, and a small handbag. She had made plans to meet someone she had matched with on a dating app. Initially, Grace she seemed very reluctant to meet a stranger in a foreign country, but he convinced her for drinks and she said yes, and so they met. So Grace met her date at a place called Sky City, an entertainment complex with bars, restaurants, and casino. Grace had been sending messages to her friend Amna back home. I click with him so well. He's an oil manager and he lives in a hotel. The evening appeared to be going well. About an hour later, they visited a place called Blue Stone Room. At one point, Grace got up from the table and the mystery man, for some reason, picked up her handbag and tried to grab something from her handbag, which is very strange. Like, it was caught up on the CCTV camera footage. It appeared like weird. But obviously, Grace didn't know about it, so she appears fine after that. And after 9:30 p.m., they both left the bar arm in arm and headed down the street. The next day was Sunday, 2nd December 2018, and it was her 22nd birthday. So her family and friends at home, were sending her messages and reaching out to her with social media. But Grace usually not responding to anyone. And she was bombarded with messages, and she's not the sort of girl who wouldn't reply. She was very friendly, and she would very chatty most of the time. And so both of her phones were going straight to voicemail. Her brother Declan said she had been bombarding them with details and pictures of her trip so far, and no response from her on her birthday was immediately alarming. So Grace was a home bird, and this was a red flag. Her parents contacted the Auckland police and reported her missing on December 5th, 2018. Police reached out to the hostel Grace was staying in, and they confirmed that she had not checked back in on December 1st, 2018. Initially, the police didn't suspect any foul play. The majority of her belongings were still at the hostel. Maybe she had some new friends and she forgot to contact her family and friends back home. Maybe she got overexcited and she traveled to another city. That's what they were thinking. They were not thinking anything too horrendous at that time. So fortunately for detectives, it didn't take long to track down where Grace had been on that Saturday night, due to the vast amounts of CCTV footage from around the city, because she was inside a hotel with casinos and bars, and she was seen everywhere with the stranger. So it wasn't difficult to locate her whereabouts at that night. The mystery man she was spotted with that night was quickly identified. Now, the same night Grace was last seen, she had changed her profile picture on Facebook, and a comment was pasted underneath the picture saying, "Beautiful, very radiant." The person that commented was also her date seen drinking with Grace. This man was Jesse Kempson. And Jesse Kempson, the person that commented was also This man was Jesse Kempson, who was currently residing at the City Life Hotel in Auckland. Jesse had written a post prior to the comments which got more attention. Extracts of the post stated that he was sorry for his mistakes and his arrogance and his selfishness. So Jesse Kempson, 26, was born in Wellington and moved several times as a child after his parents split up. He had been partially raised by his grandparents and was virtually estranged from a lot of his family. Jesse was described by everyone who knew him as a pathological liar. He claimed everything from being a cousin of a very famous All Blacks rugby player to telling people he was dying of cancer. Like, hello. He lied to employers, landlords, partners, and his family and friends. Time and again, his lies caught up with him, and he was frequently evicted from his flats and lost jobs due to his compulsive lying. So lying is a bad habit, guys. We all know that. And eventually it gets caught up with you. A former landlord of Jesse said he claimed to be a professional softball player who had been signed up by New Zealand's national softball team, the Black Sox. He would lie and say he was waiting on contract money, but after 8 weeks of excuses, the landlord contacted the Black Sox management, and again Jesse's lies were exposed. He told his landlord at the City Life Hotel that he was a top manager for Woolworths. In reality, his rent was being paid by state benefits. Jesse's last job was in telephone sales, which also ended in a dismissal due to his lies, and this all happened on the day he met Grace Millane on December 1st, 2018. So what a coincidence, right? Like, we see him in the camera, like checking her bag because he was running out of options, he was running out of lying, and he was running out of money as well. So Jesse was the last known person seen with Grace, and police knew that they needed to question Jesse to know about the whereabouts of Grace and what happened that night. So the same day Grace was reported missing on December 5th, 2018, Jesse was called to the station to answer some routine questions. And he said he matched with Grace on a dating app on Friday, November 30th, 2018 and met on Saturday. And Jesse decided to meet her and go to Sky City. So it was his idea to go to Sky City at Andy's Burger Bar on the first floor. He tells the police that he was afraid of being catfished, which is like fake profiles and photos on the app, and when you meet the person, if someone else is completely fake, they act like a different person, and when you meet them in person, they're a completely different person. So that is called being catfished, and that happens to a lot of people actually all over the world. So he said that he was really scared, so he wanted to meet her in public, and he wanted to meet her where there are a lot of cameras around. So that was the reason they were, seen, videoed, and photographed everywhere. And so it's safer to meet a stranger in a public place, right? And then he says that they both hugged and kissed and left in different directions and streets around 10 p.m. But the police asked more questions because they want to rule out the foul play, right? So Jesse volunteers from a DNA sample and says he is innocent. And police tells Jesse that they suspect that Grace might be harmed or even murdered, right? Because it's been so many days. And she's in a foreign country and she's not contacted anyone back home. So it's really alarming for someone who's very young and who's very sociable, who's very family oriented, and she is missing for so many days. So they tell him that if something bad has happened to her or if she's harmed in any way, then he is the first suspect, right? And if he's saying that he's innocent, he needs to, corroborate his story, because if he doesn't do that, he might, be questioned again. And so he is one of the few very important suspects in the case, right? Then they also suspect that she might be alive and that Jesse has nothing to do with it, Then Jesse asks if he's going to be arrested for something he didn't do, which was very strange. Like, why would you ask police officers, like, am I being arrested? Are you, like, guilty for something? Like, why would you ask that? Okay. So that was alarming. And of course, like, due to the video, like, I'm sure that Jesse knew that they, like, everybody knew, like, if he's lying about video camera footage and the police will find out that he's lying, like, he will eventually get into trouble. So he's obviously, like, a little bit scared, right? Jesse said he tried to message her on the dating app and the next day, but had noticed that Grace had unmatched him, and that is when all her conversations abruptly ended. So police officers checked out the CCTV footage of the City Life Hotel where Jesse Kempson was staying and a sinister and disturbing picture was slowly being put together. The CCTV showed that Jesse and Grace had arrived at the City Life Hotel arm in arm and exited the lift together on Jesse's third floor, but Grace was never seen leaving the building. So clearly, Jesse was lying and hiding something terrible, because why would he lie about that? Like, why was he saying that she left the casino bars and she went in a completely different direction and she went back to her hostel, and that's what he's claiming, right? But like, that never happened. She went back with him to the hotel and she went to his room, and then she was never seen like exiting the building. And that's really strange, and that's when she's missing. So morning after on Grace's birthday, Jesse is seen leaving the hotel on December 2nd, 2018 to the shopping mall to buy a suitcase, cleaning supplies. Just before noon, he headed over in taxi to a car rental company and rented a red Toyota Corolla. Several hours later, Jesse met with another woman he had engaged with on the same dating app. She later reported that he had some disturbing conversations with her, speaking about burying bodies and his friends that were police officers. His date felt so uneasy that she declined Jesse's offer to get into his car and made her own way back home, never spoke to him ever again, and deleted him from the social app. After that, Jesse went to a city center to hire a red rug carpet cleaning machine, and he explained to the staff that he had some red wine stains on the carpet and he wanted to clean them up. Later on 9:30 p.m., Jesse was seen loaded 2 suitcases onto a hotel trolley and offloaded these into the red Toyota Corolla he had rented earlier. All of this is recorded on the CCTV footage, so Jesse's lies are no longer valid. And around 7 a.m. the next day, Jesse is picked up on the camera again buying a red shovel, and 2 hours later he was spotted power washing the car. He then returned the car to the rental company and someone else later rented it. On December 5th, the same day Grace was reported missing, Jesse is seen dropping off small bags in the bins all across the city. Police arrived at the City Life Hotel and they want to talk to him and they want to question him, right? So Jesse is arrived the hotel at the same time. He spots the police officers, and he just like quickly turns in a different direction and walks away. So the police officers spotted him and they clocked him and chased after him, and then they brought him in for questioning. Despite Jesse denying anything that had happened, police still began a thorough search of his hotel room. On December 7, 2018, David, our victim's father, our victim Grace Millane's father, he arrives in Auckland and makes an emotional plea for help. On December 8, 2018, more evidence came to light and Jesse was taken into custody and interviewed again. Now his story now has drastically changed. He claims that Grace Millane spoke to him about 50 Shades of Grey and she wanted to have like rough sex with him, and they ended up having rough violent sex on Saturday night. She wanted him to strangle her or or hold her throat with a lot of strength, and so that's what he did, and then he went to the shower and he fell asleep in the shower. When he woke up, he slept on the bed, and the next day when he woke up, he realized that Grace was dead. So the police questions him that when you came out of the shower, did you not see Grace lying on the floor? And he says, no, I fell asleep, and then I thought she left, and all his lies there. And then the police okay. So that's the claim he made, and there was no substantial proof or evidence to support that claim. It was just a story that he had concocted, right? And so a police officer explained to Jesse that he needed to tell them where Grace was buried, right? So that her body can be examined by the pathologists for post-mortem examination, and they can find out the cause of the death. And once they find out the cause of the death, because they're experienced people, right? So did they try to scare him at this point? They want to tell him that if you don't tell us the true story, and we will eventually find out, and then, you know, later on Grace's body will be exhumed, right? Like, we can't keep up with this bullshit. That's what they're trying to say, right? So yeah, so he said they even tell him that pathologists are skilled at finding out the cause of the death, and then he asks directly whether he killed, and then he asks directly, like the police officer asks Jesse that whether he killed Grace or not, and he says he didn't, and the officers then arrest him because they have plenty of evidence against him, the CCTV footage and his lies, and, you know, buying a shovel and renting a car, and his hotel room, which is another picture. So the forensic evidence in Jesse's hotel room, despite his attempts to clean up, is quite contrary to Jesse's innocence. Like, Grace's blood is illuminated on the floor, and police searched the area near the Whitaker Reservoir and found a body 10 yards from the road, and it was believed to be of Grace Millane's. It was a painful moment for everyone involved in the search, and the grief was shared throughout the nation. Many people paid tribute to Grace and held vigils. The New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern publicly apologized to Grace's parents and offered her and her country's full support. Jesse Kempson was formally charged with murder of Grace Millane. On December 10, 2018, just 5 days after Grace was reported missing, Jesse appeared in court in Auckland. He was granted an interim name suppression to ensure a fair trial, which is why so much of his interview footage was blurred out for a long time. Now, following an autopsy, a pathologist confirmed that Grace had been strangled and had bruises on her arms and chest, consistent with being pinned down. Like, a considerable force would have been required, and the pressure on her neck must have lasted between like 4 to 5 minutes, enough to kill her. So obviously there was someone who had an intention to kill her, would kill her with that amount of force. Like, if you were like strangling someone for 5 minutes, would you know that you would eventually kill her? So that makes no sense. Like, the story of Jesse is a complete lie, right? And so as around 1:30 a.m. when Grace lay dead in Jesse's hotel room, Jesse carried out a number of internet searches. By using his phone, he looked up hottest fire and flesh-eating birds and Whitaker Ranges, the location where he would later try to bury Grace's body. So after that, he took several intimate photos of Grace's dead body. Just over a month after Grace's body was found, hundreds of people turned out for Grace Millane's funeral at Brentwood Cathedral in Essex. Now, Detective Inspector Scott Baird, who had been looking after the case, flew to England to pay his respects and support the Millane family. Jesse appeared in High Court and pleaded not guilty. His trial began in November later that year, and the trial would last just 3 weeks. For much of it, Jesse remained cold, calculated and detached, showing no emotion. And he never said that he was guilty or that he felt really bad for his actions. Like, none of it, like none of that. And he occasionally glanced down at the court papers or held his head in his hands. Jesse's defense team argued that although tragic, Grace's death was caused by nothing more than a consensual rough sex that had gone horribly wrong. And Jesse had panicked and attempted to hide Grace's body after he realized that the sexual encounter had accidentally taken her life. The prosecution argued that Jesse did not panic, and Jesse intentionally murdered an innocent backpacker from England on a date, on a very harmless date, through a social app. He had calmly set about covering his tracks by a labyrinth of storytelling and lies, and despite his protests of innocence, Jesse Kempson was found guilty on 22nd December 2019, just 5 hours of deliberation. Jesse was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum non-parole period of 17 years. This case prompted many people to express their anger at how Grace's life had been presented during the trial and how her death had been explained by her killer. Like, many felt it was like shameful and grotesque, with victim blaming rather than placing the blame on the murders himself and the horrendous crime he had committed. After he was found guilty in the trial for Grace Millane's murder, Jesse faced a further judge-alone 2 trials the following year with no jury present. Two women came forward with claim of being physically and sexually assaulted by him. One woman said Jesse would hold knives to her throat, choke her and force her to perform sex acts, and then drain her account of $10,000. In October 2020 trial, Jesse was found guilty of 8 charges and jailed for 7.5 years. In November 2020, he was put in another trial for raping a young British tourist he met on the same dating app 8 months before he had murdered Grace Millane. He told her, "If you don't do this, I will kill you and I will kill your family, and you know I will." He was found guilty and given another 3.5 years for this crime. So this sentence of 11 additional years, it's like it will run concurrently with the murder sentence for Grace Millane, because he's obviously already there in the prison for life imprisonment, and he will not get parole for 17 years. So he doesn't need to do another additional 11 years because he's already in prison, right? And tragically though, after all of this happened, Grace's father, David Millane, passed away after a battle with cancer. In December 2020, the name suppression concealing Jesse's identity finally lapses when the Supreme Court denied his last-ditch appeal against the sentence in Grace's murder. To honor Grace's memory, her family and friends raised £11,000 for the White Ribbon Campaign, which is a charity to end male violence against women by engaging with men and boys to campaign and to make a stand against violence, right? Love Grace campaign was also set up in Grace's honor, and the campaign asked for donations of handbags filled with essential items to help provide support for women seeking refuge from harmful and abusive relationships. I felt like it was a really sad story, since the girl was like just 21 and she wanted to explore the world, and how her life was tragically taken away by one selfish act by someone. And in fact, his life completely changed too. So for more crime stories, do please keep watching my channel. I also post about fashion and fashion styling. I'm also a fashion designer. I'm also a doctor. So I do post about nutrition and certain diseases and their treatments. Do follow my YouTube channel, and take care and enjoy the evening. Take care.